Welcome back everyone to another video, and it just looks like the FTC or the CMA just keeps on trying, and honestly it's starting to get a little desperate, especially on the FTC side. They've noticed that the deal with the CMA seems to be crumbling, and so they've decided that now's a good time to throw in an injunction to Microsoft and try to get the deal basically put on ice, as it were, so they can't actually close the deal. But there's a couple of roadblocks ahead for them, and it seems they kind of not only shot themselves in the foot when they first sued, but by appealing in the state district that they did, they kind of shot themselves doubly in the foot. And well, this doesn't look like it's going to be their week or their day, and the chances of this getting thrown out on Thursday is extremely high. But let's go over to Twitter and actually get a bit more of this information so we can see what's actually going on. Now, as you can see here, Florian Mueller is a patent lawyer who has been following this case clearly. And as you can see at the bottom here, let me just show this bit here. As I wrote about 12 hours ago, the case has now been referred to Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley. Now, for those of you that don't know who she is she's a judge that basically was in charge of the players' lawsuit against Microsoft and Activision in, the one that they brought upon, and Sony decided that they would give their lawyers to them to try and get their case a little more firm and push towards a judge, and it got thrown out 2 or 3 times and killed. Well, she's the judge that's actually in charge of the FTC trying to seek an injunction or a preliminary injunction in order to stop the merger from going ahead, basically from Microsoft closing the deal ahead of the actual trial that the FTC has. Because once the deal is closed, it's closed, right? They can issue fines, they can work with remedies, but they're not going to, once it's closed, it's a done deal. It's going to be extremely difficult for it to turn around and break that corporation up. And we can see here, some believe the FTC is out of luck because the ABK injunction complaint got reassigned to Judge Corley. If the FTC had filed elsewhere, the case would likely have been transferred to the Northern District of California anyway, to be merged with a private lawsuit there. So had they have actually, done it elsewhere, they wouldn't have had the same judge, but instead they were so incompetent at what they're doing that they actually did it in the same district as Judge Corley and have actually landed the one judge they probably did not want on this case, because the chances of her throwing this case out because there is no legal basis or standing for the FTC to seek a temporary injunction is crazy. It's simply a question of judicial efficiency, as the judge already knows a lot about this merger. So she would have been picked anyway. And it's hilarious at what the FTC is trying to do now, because they've clearly seen that the CMA is a lost cause. They can see the CMA crumbling, and we actually see this with this article here. Again, sorry for your eyes. It is quite bright, but this page is bright, and I can't really do anything about it. But it says, Microsoft's Activision Blizzard appeal proceedings appear to lean in favor of merging parties, UK antitrust lawyers say. Now, I can't read the full article because I have to subscribe to this, but what's interesting with that is the fact that the actual antitrust lawyers in the UK are now siding with Microsoft and Activision. They are now putting more pressure and more weight on the CMA in telling them that they are actually wrong. Now, this FTC injunction in place, that they're trying to get in place, is more than likely going to get thrown out. And as you can see here, another tweet, the facts are just overwhelmingly on Microsoft's side, especially when factoring all the signed and legally enforceable deals they have in place. Microsoft is already putting those deals to action with Nvidia, for example, where they're offering them an actual 10-year deal, and they're actually now putting Game Pass on there as well. And over here we can see Microsoft Activision Blizzard appeal proceedings appear to lean in favor of the merging parties, which is basically what I was just reading there. And again, Florian here is saying it's been my position since April 26th that the CMA most likely won't be able to defend that one. Glad to see the UK antitrust lawyers interviewed by Equity Report agree. I had a good time in London with the CAT hearing and the Antitrust Economics Conference. It's the actual FTC is pretty much grasping at straws right now, and it's kind of seeming a little too desperate. The hurdle for a temporary restraining order is low, but it also wouldn't solve the problem the FTC is facing. They need a preliminary injunction. Judge Corley knows the merger, could deny a temporary restraining order, but again, a merger temporary restraining order wouldn't mean much. At least FTC will fail to get a preliminary injunction, which basically means they're wasting their time, and what they're seeking is just going to get thrown out the window. And again, it's just going on that basis. FTC wants federal court to enjoin Microsoft Activision over theory rejected by regulators in over 40 countries. Essentially what that means is that the FTC, with their preliminary injunction, is trying to put a block in place to say that the Microsoft is wrong, and that because we have sued and our court case is so far away, we don't believe that the 40 countries that have actually agreed to approve this deal are actually correct. We believe that we alone are correct. And when they're going to get asked for evidence and information on why the 40 regulators are incorrect and they themselves are correct, I'm really curious as to what they're going to say, because there is literally nothing they can say to actually defend this. I mean, you can see how incompetent the FTC is here. The FTC staff yesterday uploaded a document that is a month old and just a scheduling order. No confidential business information. I believe they did this so they also attached to their temporary restraining order motion in California as an exhibit. They should care more about transparency. It's quite embarrassing the way they're going about this. So as you may have seen, the video's kind of abruptly changed slightly at this point. That is because we have breaking news. I actually recorded the full video before this because I wasn't expecting this to come out today, because we were supposed to have the hearing on Thursday, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen anymore. It's going to be on the 22nd because things are just moving that fast. So I've kind of taken the end part of the video out and I'm placing this part of the video in. So I hope you can, instead of releasing two separate videos, I'm just placing this here, and hopefully this will make a lot more sense. So the first part of this video was talking about all the information leading up to this, but as this has just become breaking news, well, we are here now. Right, enjoy the video. It seems like there's been a breakthrough on the actual case. There was some breaking news, as you can see here, from Tom Warren regarding the FTC's attempt to put a restraining order on Microsoft to actually get them, stop them from buying Activision Blizzard, or basically stop them from closing it early. Now, I did actually have another video made just before I was about to publish, and then this actually popped up at 3 a.m. in the morning. So I'm recording this at 3 a.m. so I hope you enjoy it. But as it says here, Microsoft has been temporarily restrained from buying Activision Blizzard. A judge rules. The FTC has secured a temporary restraining order that will last until the court rules on a preliminary injunction in a hearing starting June the 2nd. Now, before we get into all of this, it's worth just reading this. All eyes are now on the ruling for the preliminary injunction. It was expected that the FTC would secure the TRO, so the restraining order was always expected to happen. But the preliminary injunction, the actual injunction that they want to do, is a much higher hurdle to pass. The FTC lost its request for an injunction in the Meta within acquisition earlier this year. Now, if we go down, people are asking, is this a good thing or a bad thing? This is exactly what Microsoft have been wanting. They've wanted this to go to court because once it goes there and it gets thrown out, then it's done. And of course, Jacqueline is the one that's actually going to be spearheading the court case, and she's the one that actually got rid of the actual players' lawsuit against Microsoft, where she said it was basically full of rubbish and there was no new evidence here to pertain the actual thing. But let's just go through this. Okay, that's not going to work. Yeah, the Federal Trade Commission brings this action for provisional relief pursuant to Section 13B of the Federal Trade Commission Act. The FTC seeks a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction enjoining defendants Microsoft and Activision from consummating a proposed transaction while the FTC's administrative review of the transaction is pending. Essentially, they don't want them to close the deal while everything is going on. The court have read and considered the temporary restraining order, finds that temporary relief pursuant to the FTC Act 13B 15 USC is necessary to maintain the status quo while the complaint is pending. Basically, the preliminary injunction. Preserve this court's ability to order effective relief in the event it determines a preliminary injunction is warranted. And this is a tall order for the FTC to actually grab. It is pretty much grasping at straws, so it's probably not going to work out the way they wanted it to work out. And preserve the FTC's ability to obtain an effective permanent remedy in the event that it prevails in its pending administrative proceeding. So, in regards to the Microsoft Corp Activision thing. Now, this bit's really important, and preserve the FTC's ability to obtain an effective permanent remedy. So, what it's saying here is that this court case is, they kind of have to accept this temporary restraining order until the court, this case is brought to head on the 22nd in regards to the fact that they need to give the FTC the opportunity to either A, win the case against Microsoft, which is a very tall order at this point because they lost the last one to Meta historically, and if that's a precedent to go by, they're going to lose this one as well. And this is honestly what Microsoft wanted anyway, so they've really played into Microsoft's hands here. They've basically played into a point where Microsoft is now going to go to court, lay everything bare, and whatever the Judge Jacqueline actually says will go, and the FTC won't even have a chance to rebuttal at that point. It will be game over if it's voted against them. And honestly, with the way preliminary injunctions are, it's going to be very hard for the FTC to win this. But it is accordingly, the FTC's TRO is granted as follows. Microsoft and Activision shall not close or consummate their proposed transaction or a substantially similar transaction until 11:59 p.m. Pacific Time on the 5th business day after the court rules on the FTC's request for a preliminary injunction, which is more than likely going to fail. And the date is on a date set, or whichever is later. Microsoft and Activision shall prevent any or other officers, directors, domestic or foreign agents, divisions, subsidiaries, affiliates, partnerships, or joint ventures from closing or consummating directly or indirectly the proposed transaction or a substantially similar transaction. The court sets an evidentiary hearing on the preliminary injunction for June 22 and 23, 2023 in Courtroom 8 at 450 Golden Gate Avenue, San Francisco, California, before the Honorable Jacqueline Scott Corley, who again is the judge that basically threw out the players' lawsuit that they held against Microsoft, not once, not twice, but 3 times, even with Sony's support and Sony's lawyers getting involved and providing them with a written document to support their legal case. It was still thrown out. So the chance of this preliminary injunction actually happening is really, really remote to none. It's not impossible. Anything's possible. But so is flying pigs. We're not going to see those anytime soon. But technically, in fairy folklore, it is possible. But the reality is that this is probably going to fall flat in the FTC's face. And at that point, all the cards will be in Microsoft's hands, because at that point, Microsoft gains full control. And for the FTC, that's game over. Like, that is literally game over. Microsoft and Activision will submit their brief in opposition to the motion for preliminary injunction by June 16. The FTC will submit its reply by noon, June 20th. The court will issue a further order with instructions for format for preliminary injunction evidentiary hearing, which will be held on the 22nd and the 23rd of June. And yeah, that is this. This was signed by Edward J. Davila for Jacqueline Scott Corley, United States District Judge. So this is pretty interesting stuff. The FTC is playing a really, really dangerous game here, and they've kind of gone all in. And if they lose the preliminary injunction, they lose everything. And at that point, Microsoft can just easily... There's nothing they can do to stop Microsoft just stepping all over them and brushing them aside and just closing over them. So, good luck to the FTC to a certain degree, because Lena Khan is really... I mean, she's out of options at the moment, and this is pretty much a Hail Mary. And unfortunately for her, she came across the one judge that she absolutely, like I said in the video earlier, she didn't want to get. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. This is turning into a joke at this point, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Remain legend.